What's up, guys? Today we're talking about my new book, The Combatives Blueprint. So, a couple years ago, I decided I was going to write a book on martial arts, specifically in combatives, and I started this book, like I said, about 5 years ago with the specific intention of not only developing myself personally, but being able to relay that information effectively to others. And one of the benefits of that is, one, when I approached and learned new things, I had to figure out why a system was teaching it. Most systems developed specific reasons for what they do, right? There are some systems that when they teach kicking, they're like, oh, you always chamber the kick, and other ones like you never chamber the kick. And there's a reason why, but it requires a little bit of thought, and it requires a little bit of context of that time. So as I was kind of working on this, I was not only improving myself, but I was looking to help others. And what I found when I did my books for obstacle course racing, I feel like as you improved in a subject, people will start asking you a lot of questions, and then sometimes it's easier just to be like, just pick up the book. I know that's like kind of a weird, but as someone who writes a lot, it's not necessarily as big of a deal for me to like sit down and work on a book. So that's what I started doing. I started working on this book years ago. I've made so many changes, so many adjustments, but this is essentially the final product. It's about 300 pages. It's available on Amazon for $30 or off my website, teamstrengthspeed.com. If you're going to order it, please order it off of teamstrengthspeed.com. If you're in the U.S., also under ultraocrman.com. Order it off my website in the US, I get a better cut of the profits. Be much appreciated. For those who want a discount on the book, you can head over to my Patreon. If you sign up for that at the $10 level, you will get $10 off the book, right? So it essentially takes care of itself that first month, and you get access to a whole bunch of other videos. I post most of my martial arts, combatives related videos on Patreon, just so they're not just kind of floating out there in the public. I have a little more control over them. So if you like reviews, if you like actual skills, if you want to learn about some of the various stuff I've learned through my time in Special Forces and all the knife systems I've studied and etc., striking systems, the Patreon is the place to go, patreon.com/GreekCombatives. Anyway, we'll talk about the book a little more. So I specifically chose to name the Combatives Blueprint because I compare martial arts to like the blueprint, the layout of a house. If you are building a house, everyone's going to want different things. Some people want a bigger bathroom, some people want a bigger living room, some people want a bigger garage. But generally, you need all those parts of your house. And that was how I compare combatives. You want a base level of skill in all ranges of combat. Everything from shooting to striking with weapons, down to punching, kicking, and then grappling. We saw, especially in UFC 1, if you don't know grappling, you're kind of screwed. If someone chooses to fight you in that grappling range. If they stay in one of the other ranges, that's fine. You can fight them in that range. But the enemy has a choice. The enemy or the opponent, whatever, if it's the sport context, the opponent will decide, or at least has a vote in what range you're fighting in. So that's what this book is. It essentially goes through and talks about all the different ranges of combat, does a little bit kind of like a once over the world of each one, and it allows you to understand, hey, if you don't understand the stuff that I've written in here, which a lot of it is wave tops with a little bit of specific sprinkled in, if you don't understand the basics that are in each chapter, then that's something you need to work on for your own personal martial arts journey. If you want the deep dive of us discussing this, there's an episode of the Tiga Tactics podcast called The Combatives Blueprint, where myself, Patrick, and Conrad, hosts of the Tiga Tactics podcast, talk about this in depth. But there's a chapter on each range of combat. There's a chapter on nutrition, because being fat is not conducive to martial arts, period. It's also, if we're going to talk about health and safety, right, a lot of people will die from heart disease, and eating well and making sure you're putting the right things in your body not only helps you improve for martial arts, but it keeps you healthier for the long run. There's also a chapter on fitness. Another often overlooked part of combatives martial arts is people will be like, well, if I know skill, I'll just draw my pistol, I'll just draw my knife. But they don't take into account the physical ability to not only create space to be able to do those things in a self-defense context, but also just general fitness plays an important role in the ability to fight, run, etc. So we'll talk a little bit about that in there. It's got a ton of information. It's got also stuff on mindset. Dr. Conrad Bowie, one of the founders of Tiga Tactics, wrote the foreword. He has like 9 black belts. So incredibly smart. So I was honored to have him write the opening. But like I said, the ranges we talk about a support range, which is basically any weapon system you operate that requires multiple people. For that one, a lot of it's a little bit less specifics and a little bit more of concepts that I apply from things like calling for a CAS, close air support, close combat aviation, and artillery, and use lessons learned to apply towards how you use empty hand fighting and weapons fighting. Projectile range, talk a little bit about firearms, striking weapon range, which is kind of focused on knives, and then we go into pancration type stuff. So long range, which is like kicking, mid range is like punching, close range, which is like trapping, and then kato pancration, which is ground fighting. So from standing to ground, standing grappling into ground fighting. The two on standing grappling and grappling also tend to be very concept focused, just because I don't think you can teach grappling or standing grappling in a book very well. I think you just need to get out there and experience it on the mat. So please check it out. 294 pages packed with information. This is just a very dense book, but also easy to read. So dense with material, dense with content, easy to read. There are people I know who've sat down and read it probably in like 2 or 3 days without any issues. Again, just kind of breezing through the information. And it's got a lot of like recommendations for ways to go forward. At the end of each of those ranges of combat, I essentially give a couple recommendations, right? So at the ends, here's striking weapons range. There's essentially here's something you do in a weekend that'll make you more proficient if you don't have any more time to spend to it. Here's something you do that takes about a year, so I have a little more time. And here's something you can do that takes 2 to 4 years. Here's something you can do to take 5 years, right? So even if all you do is the beginner level that one weekend, you are exponentially farther along that knowledge base than anyone else, unless someone specifically trains. At 1 year, you've surpassed, again, a huge percentage of the population, and then by 2 to 4 years and 5 years and beyond, you may not feel like you're specialized, but most people will not do an activity for more than 5 years. I've bounced around between triathlon, ultra running, obstacle course racing, martial arts, and most people will stop before the 5-year mark. When I was talking to Patrick Wong, another one of the founders of Tiga Tactics, he said it takes about 5 years to get good at anything, and I agree with that. That's why I talk about the 10,000 hour rules in my book on obstacle course racing. That's why I mentioned that rule in here as well. 10,000 hour rule means it basically takes about 10,000 hours of practice to achieve mastery in whatever, 10,000 of deliberate practice to achieve mastery in whatever you're focused on. So that takes years. It's a lot longer than 5 actually, but going from sport to sport, I've noticed that whenever you talk to someone, they're always like, oh, I'm in my 2nd or 3rd year, and you very rarely people like, I've been doing this for 5 years or more. So if you can stay focused, stay consistent, that's actually the key to success. It's not necessarily being the hardest work in the room, it's always to be the most consistent worker, because consistency, showing up on the days you want to, will take you a lot further. Also, mindset covered in this book, which is a huge part of martial arts, huge part of fitness, a huge part of doing better in life. So check this out. Again, you can pick it up off Amazon off my website. And then if you want a discount, head over to the Patreon page. If you want more martial focused videos, again, head over to my Patreon page and you'll get a little more technique stuff. I tend to keep that stuff behind the paywall. So, all right. Thanks for stopping by.